Hey guys, it's Mr. Mini Painter here, and today I am painting Thorin of Thorin's Company, the first in a line of a lot of videos coming up with many dwarves. So get ready for this one. I first primed Thorin all black because most of these models are quite dark, and I like a dark base tone then. It's quite a beautiful model, which you can assemble in two ways if you want. There is an extra set of arms that you can choose where he's swinging Orcrist. I like to use the classic arm with the Oakenshield, of course, because a lot of other models have the new Orcrist sword he is swinging. So yeah, I like to keep it with this one, but you can choose, of course. So as a base color for the face, I'm using Bugman's Glow, as well as the fingers of his hand showing below his sleeve. Next, I'm using Cadian Flesh Tone to brighten this up a little bit. Focus on the raised areas and leave most of the recessed areas, the eye sockets, the side of the nose, for example, just below the lip, leave that a bit darker. Then I washed everything with Wayland Flesh Shade. And of course now comes the difficult part, which is the eyes. I used Palette Witch Flesh, as always, to touch the eyes. Use a fine detail brush for this. It doesn't really matter if you're not that good at painting eyes, because you can go over it with some Bugman's Glow to correct the stuff that you did wrong. So for the pupils, I used Abaddon Black. I mainly use Abaddon Black for eye pupils because it stands out quite clearly, and when you use a color it's more difficult to see. But of course you can use any eye color you want. So Kislev Flesh is up for the next layer of skin, and I usually do this with a fine detail brush first and then use a wash to kind of blend those colors together. Next, Abaddon Black, I used it to correct some parts on the beard and hair, because I want the hair to be as black as possible as a base tone. I'm highlighting the hair with some Mechanica Standard Gray, and just focus on the upper parts, because Thorin's hair is quite black, but you want some detail in it, so that's why the dark gray comes in. And for a final highlight, but just on a few tips, the top of his head, the first strain on hair on the side of his head, I'm using Administratum Gray. Next up is Storm Vermin Fur mixed with some Abaddon Black for the cloth parts. There are not that many, but there's some part on the arms. And the legs if you want. I'm highlighting that with some pure Storm Vermin Fur. And after this, I'm continuing to the metal parts. For that, Lead Belcher is my choice. I'm trying a stipple effect to get those scales on the arm. It's quite difficult with this plastic model because they're not very defined, so you have to kind of figure it out yourself. But you'll manage. I used Black Templar instead of Nuln Oil, but you can choose, of course. But I like Black Templar a little bit more because you can use it as a paint, and Nuln Oil tends to get over all of it. You can choose whatever you want, of course. It's just a matter of what you're comfortable with. But make sure to to pick either of those two to darken down those scales. And the sword, of course. Then we're going to the blues. For that, I'm using Night Lord's Blue, which is a nice dark blue base tone. There's a lot of blue on him. That's the main color of his suit. I'm shading it with some Drakenhof Nightshade. What I like about this shade is it doesn't really dry up that shiny, and if it does, it's too shiny to your taste, you can go over it with some Night Lord's Blue if you want. I'm mixing Night Lord's Blue with some Aloetic Blue for a first highlight. And I focused on the edges of the suit, as you can see here, and some of the raised areas, the folds in the cloth. And after this, I'm building it up with some youth blue. And try and stay a little bit smaller, if you know what I mean. Just the edges, the very rims. Well, you know how highlights work, right? After this, it's time for the leathery looking parts. Dried bark and Abaddon black as a base coat for the shield, the shoes, and the quiver in the back. And there's a small sword scabbard, which you can do with the same color as well if you want. Or you can differentiate with that one, for example, with some Rhinox hide. Next up is Sycorax Bronze. I'm using it for the belt in the middle, the rims of the belt, and there is a pattern with some diagonal lines in there. I'm touching that up with the Sycorax Bronze as well as the back of the sword, as well as the edges of the scabbard. Then some pure dried bark to highlight those boots and bark on the arm. Highlight it with some Baneblade Brown. And if you want it to be more gradual, mix it with the previous color first. To do this on the arm, I'm using a dry brush. First outlined it with a regular brush, and next I'm using Stormhost Silver as a edge highlight on the metal parts, mainly the sword, and I picked out some of the scales that would catch the light. Next, some lead belcher to pick out the two pointy edges on the back of the Oakenshield. There's two tips of metal, two spikes pointing out in the back. I'm darkening it a little bit down with some Nuln Oil, and I took the entire arm with it. You can use Agrax Earthshade if you want, but for the metal parts I want some Nuln Oil. And I wanted to define the crevices, the cracks in the shield, and for that I liked black. After that, go over it with some Gorthor Brown and a dry brush. This way you remain the darkened areas, and you get some random highlight effects. I chose to go over the shield again with some Agrax Earthshade to create some extra brown tones in it. Redefine the shaded areas, as you can see here. Then some Fondia Brown and Abaddon Black, and I used that on the straps under his wrist protection and under the shield. Basically all the straps you can see. Next, some youth blue to create a nice pattern on his wrist, and this is quite hard. This is optional. If you feel secure enough, then please try it, because it adds so much more detail to your model if you are able to do this. Add some lines, think of a pattern that you like. For dwarves, it's mainly straight lines, a lot of runic characters mainly. I like this one, just a line in the middle, 2 lines in the back, on the outsides I mean, and yeah, just go wild. Think of something you like with some extra lines and hooks, and it will really pick up your model. And if you mess up, basically just go over it with the base color again and start over. And that's it for Thorin. First in the line of paint tutorials for Thorin's Company. A lot more coming right up. This is the result of the first one. I hope you liked it, I hope it helped, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye!